Hi there, I'm Sian Holderness, and welcome to Health Unravelled. I'm a nutritionist, counsellor, and eating psychology coach, and in my almost decade of experience in the health industry, have seen far too many women and men become consumed with weight loss, only to end up yo-yo dieting with disordered eating patterns and impinge and restrict cycles. This just breaks my heart, so I'm here to unravel everything you thought you knew about health and yourself, to help you start putting the pieces of the puzzle together and begin the process of aligning your mind, body, and soul, creating a happier, healthier you. So let's dive straight in. Welcome back to another episode of Health Unravelled. I just want to say I appreciate you being here so much. Whether you're new and this is your first episode you've ever listened to, or whether you're a long-term listener or somewhere in between, I just want to say how much I really appreciate you. And if you love this episode or you're really enjoying listening, if you can take a couple of seconds to leave me a review, whether it's just with stars, a couple of stars, or some words that let me know how this podcast is helping you, I would appreciate that beyond words. Now, I'm going to jump in with today's intuitive card reading before we then talk on the topic of should you be tracking your calories. So the card I pulled today is called Moonlight, and it says travel, romance, potential. Perfect timing with overseas travel starting back up, right? So the card reads, romance is in the air. You'll soon travel to somewhere special. A romantic evening leads you to discover a source of untapped and virtually unlimited potential. A simple yet inspirational idea comes to you and will have you look at life from a new perspective. Through this, you will create something new, something that will be of lasting value. Relax, unwind, and enjoy this time. The reflective light of the moon fills your heart with love and revels a deep well of untapped creative possibility. And the affirmation that goes with this card says, I invite romance into my life. I look at things from a new perspective. My life is full of unlimited potential. Creative possibilities are all around me. Life is an endless source of inspiration. Now, I also want to add to that, if you're listening and you're currently single and you're like, no one's going to take me on a romantic date, it doesn't have to be, we don't have to look externally for romance or for inspiration or for love even. In fact, it's actually more beneficial for us to bring that from within. So perhaps that's a little note to take yourself out on a romantic evening to a romantic place and bring that romance in for yourself, because we don't have to always look for that externally. We can actually create that for ourselves. Now, on to today's topic. Should you be tracking calories? So I want to give a little bit of a background on what calories actually are. And no, they are not the little creatures that sneak into your cupboard at night and tighten all your clothes, I promise you. What calories are is they're purely just a measurement of energy. That's all calories are. So we measure electricity with watts. That's like the system. We measure money in currency, right? In Australian dollars. We measure energy in our body as calories. And so sometimes I think just knowing that and bringing ourselves back to that knowing can actually take away some of the power that these numbers can hold over us. So let me go back a bit. I have been in this industry a long time. There's many different ways that I have worked with people over the years to help them towards their health goals. And calories is something that is very big at the moment. It has been in the past as well, don't get me wrong. It's not just now, but calories are a big thing. We've got a lot of coaches, a lot of fitness coaches. FYM, if it fits your macros, was like a huge thing just a few years ago, and I still think it is a little bit today. Now, there's also a lot of people that have been fitness coaches that have done the if it fits your macros, that have worked with clients with calories and that have actually tracked their own calories for a very long time, that are now coming out and saying, you don't need to do that. You can eat intuitively. This is how I do it. And to some extent, I somewhat almost fall into that category too, because I have tracked my calories. I have worked with clients who track their calories as well. And we come from this place where we're like, oh, you don't need to do that, just eat intuitively. But we've got this years, and for me, even it's just in my knowledge in nutrition. We've got this experience, this privilege, right? Where we have this experience over the years. And for a lot of people, myself included, I could eat and probably approximate my calories and be pretty on par because of that experience. And so a lot of these people are coming out with this privilege of being able to eat intuitively because of the history that they've got. And they're telling you to eat intuitively, and potentially you're sitting there like, what the hell? Why isn't this working for me? And it's because these people that are telling you to do it, which is great, don't get me wrong. I love that there's a bit more education around how to genuinely be a healthy person without having to look at numbers to tell you that you're doing a good job. But they're coming from this place of privilege in that area. And so that's something that I'm really mindful of when I'm having this kind of conversation. Now, this isn't going to be a podcast on slamming calories, because for the right people, they can actually work really well. Tracking your food can actually be a really good educational experience. For that reason, like I just said, there's a lot of people that are like, just eat intuitively, don't track your calories, but they're able to do that because of the experience that they gain through tracking. So using calories or macros, whichever one you go for, or both, if that's what you decide to do, can, for some people, be extremely beneficial. Now, who those some people are is those who are more logical and not making more emotional decisions. Because I feel like if you're a logical person, and I've seen this in my experience, if you're a very logical person, then numbers make sense, right? So I feel like having a really good solid health foundation, like I've spoken about, and if you're unsure what health foundations are, you can go back a couple of episodes because I describe it in depth there. I feel like if you've got really good health foundations in general, then that is a good place that you can start from if you're no longer feeling so emotional around your decisions with food, to then, if you want to either gain more muscle or lose a bit more body fat, and you've got that solid base of health that you can fall back on, then tracking calories can, in those circumstances, be quite beneficial. It's great for athletes. Athletes generally tend to be more logical, but it's not so good if you're a very emotional person. And the reason, and there's nothing wrong with that either, okay? There is ways around this where you don't have to track your calories, and that's why I put such a big focus on health foundations. Now, if you are a very emotional person and you make emotional decisions with your food, with your nutrition, and with your exercise, then tracking calories can actually take you away from your intuition, because you have to ignore your hunger signals, you have to ignore your fullness signals sometimes, and you basically just put all your trust in numbers as opposed to really listening to yourself and your body. And that's the part of it that I really don't feel is beneficial for you if you're a more emotional eater, because when we are in that more emotional state, we actually are already disconnected from ourselves and our body. And our body's trying to tell us, like, emotions are literally just like messengers, right? They're messengers and they're trying to tell us something. And if we're ignoring those messages, but then we're reacting to our body's feelings, as opposed to honoring those feelings, which are two different things, and that's a whole podcast episode in itself, then we're already too far away from our body. We're already too far detached from our body and its needs. And so putting then our trust in numbers to tell us how we should be and what we should be feeling can actually be really detrimental. And the other part is it can take us away from, I am going to eat this, and I'm going to enjoy it, to this is a certain amount of numbers. And so food steers away from being fuel for our bodies, and it steers away from being memories for our bodies, right? And it turns into just this number. And, I've worked with a lot of clients in the past that we transition from tracking into this more intuitive place. And it's something that I actually really enjoy doing because, as I said, tracking calories can be very educational, but it can also, for the wrong person, it can be so detrimental. So the message I want to convey here is that there's not one way that fits all. There's not one solution that works for everyone. And the kind of clients I work with, chances are if you're listening to this, potentially you're on that more emotional end of the spectrum as opposed to the logical or even the conscious end. Perhaps you're transitioning into that more conscious space because that is the aim of the game with what I do. But potentially you're sitting in that more emotional end of the spectrum. And if that's the case, then tracking calories without those foundations of health can actually be quite detrimental for you. So a really good way of actually assessing this, and I've created, and this took me so long to put together, I've actually created like a little questionnaire that helps you assess what your relationship with your health and nutrition and exercise and body image even is. Whether you are in that more emotional space, whether you are in that more logical space, or potentially if you're somewhere in the middle where you are more emotional but you're wanting to transition to that place of higher consciousness with listening to your body and your intuition and just generally living a healthy life. And I think again that's somewhere where calories can have a bit of a downfall because it can be quite consuming. Having your phone or an app tell you what you should and shouldn't be doing, it can be really, really consuming from your life. And for me, for some people that works well and that's great and that's amazing, good for them, but that's not what my place is here, and it's not what my audience is looking for, if that makes sense. Because if you're listening to me, chances are you resonate with what I say, whereas if you were following a macro coach and you resonate with what they say, then perhaps that might be the right track for you. But for me, I feel like health and weight loss and tracking and even exercise, we make it all consuming because perhaps we've neglected it for so long that we feel we have to like really make up for it. So it's like that all or nothing mindset, right? We can't have a balance in between. And I feel like for a lot of people, calories can actually be really consuming. Again, don't get me wrong. I do have clients who track. I have had clients that track in the past. I do have a couple that still track now and it works really well for them, but that's because they've done the work to get to that more conscious space. For me, I tend to work with clients that are either at the emotional end of the spectrum or that we've worked for long enough that they're in that more conscious space where they can balance logic. And again, if you're unsure what I'm talking about, go back a few episodes. You'll see an episode that asks you, are you an emotional, conscious, or logical person? And I personally don't tend to work with many clients that are on that more logical side. It's not my area of expertise, I suppose, in some sense, because the people on the more logical side do tend to be athletes and things like that. So that's generally not who I work with. Or they're very emotionally shut off, in which case I do work with clients like that, in which logic overrides their ability to feel emotions. And because it can be so consuming, it works as a really good distraction. So I do work with clients in that capacity, but it's not the majority of my client base, I suppose. So I hope this has made a little bit of sense. I will put a link to the quiz, the emotional versus inquisitive versus logical. And inquisitive is more so you're in an emotional space, but you're kind of starting to question it and you want to change. So I'll put the link to the quiz in the show notes. If I can get my words out, that'd be really helpful, right? And also, again, just to say that the emotional eating workshop is live and available now. So if you do fall on that emotional end of the spectrum, the emotional eating workshop is very affordable with payment plans available. It's less than $400, which is insane because this course is absolutely life-changing. The amount of insane feedback I've had from this workshop has been absolutely just mind-blowing. And it's really, for me, it makes me feel really proud. I'm really, really proud of this workshop. I'm really proud of everything that I put together in it. And I'm really proud of the clients that have gone through and listened and actioned, right? It's the action. And especially, module 2 in the emotional eating workshop is really vulnerable. And that's the module when people message me and they're like, so I finished watching module 2 and I can't stop crying, because it really hits at a different space. It's a way of looking at it that you've probably never even thought about, let alone worked through before. And that is where the power comes. That's one of the most powerful modules in the emotional eating workshop. So the link to that is also below. As I said, it's less than $400. There's really affordable payment plans available. And there's options to upgrade where you actually get 2 appointments with me as well. So all of those links are below. Thank you so much again for being here. I'd love for you to leave a review, and otherwise I will speak to you next time. If you loved this episode, please let me know by leaving me a review or sharing this with your friends. It's so important for me to get this information out to those that need to hear it. So your feedback means the absolute world to me. And also, if you have any topic requests, hit me up with them too.